The standard autopsy for 1990s retail is straightforward. E-commerce arrived and physical storefronts collapsed. This timeline overlooks the internal mechanics of corporate failure. Wall Street engineered many of these collapses through leveraged buyouts and highly restrictive capital structures that prioritized debt servicing over operational growth. Brands like Blockbuster and Toys R Us dominated their respective markets for decades, appearing financially invincible. So take Toys R Us. Right up until its Chapter 11 filing in September of 2017, the vast majority of its 1,600 global stores were actively turning a profit. Consumer demand existed. People were still buying toys. When a business remains operationally profitable but still collapses, the rot is usually found on the balance sheet rather than the income statement. In 2005, a consortium of private equity firms, KKR, Bain Capital, and Vornado Realty Trust, purchased Toys R Us for $6.6 billion. They executed a leveraged buyout. Buyers used a small fraction of their money, and the massive borrowed debt was placed entirely onto Toys R Us. The company now generated hundreds of millions annually just for interest, siphoning revenue from core operations straight to lenders. Selling merchandise became a secondary objective. The primary financial function of Toys R Us was servicing debt it never asked to take on. By the time the company entered bankruptcy, that debt load had compounded to $5 billion. This chart maps out their impending debt maturity timeline. The retailer was staring down an immediate $400 million payment due in 2018, followed by a staggering $1.7 billion wall in 2019. At the exact same time, the retail landscape required immense capital expenditure, or CapEx. So transitioning to e-commerce or digital streaming requires building vast server networks, modernizing warehouses, and overhauling entire logistics chains. This multi-tiered waterfall shows how a highly leveraged company is forced to operate. Revenue flows in from the top, but cash is legally obligated to service interest and private equity fees first. Capital reaching the bottom CapEx bucket is reduced to a trickle. Meanwhile, unleveraged competitors like Amazon bypassed interest tiers, pouring unimpeded capital directly into their infrastructure buckets. Executives at legacy retailers saw the internet coming. They simply lacked the unencumbered cash flow to build a defense against it. Those looming 2018 and 2019 debt maturity dates were public knowledge. To the broader market, they acted as an invisible countdown clock. That countdown infected the supply chain. Vendors like Mattel and Hasbro started calculating the risk of shipping physical inventory to a company that might default before the invoices were even paid. Fearing for their own liquidity, suppliers drastically tightened their payment terms. Many demanded cash up front before putting a single box on a truck, which abruptly drained the retailer's remaining cash reserves. The squeeze hit in September, the absolute worst possible moment, right as the retailer was attempting to stock its shelves for critical holiday shopping, which accounted for the bulk of its annual sales. Financial engineering creates a lethal, self-fulfilling prophecy. The debt profile spooks the vendors. The vendors choke off the inventory. Empty shelves collapse sales, and the lack of revenue forces the default. On September 19th, 2017, the math finally broke. Toys R Us filed for bankruptcy protection in the Eastern District of Virginia. Filing for Chapter 11 is distinct from Chapter 7 liquidation. Chapter 11 is specifically designed to keep the underlying business alive while the debt is resolved. The court creates a legal firewall. On one side, the ongoing operations, 1,600 stores and 64,000 employees. On the other, $5 billion legacy debt is isolated and frozen. With debt paused, they secured over $3 billion in DIP financing from a JP Morgan-led syndicate. Because DIP financing gets priority repayment status, lenders are willing to provide it. This new cash flows directly into the shielded operations, allowing the company to pay staff, honor customer programs, keep the doors open through the holidays while the court untangled the 2005 leveraged buyout mess. Chapter 11 operates as a highly regulated reboot. It's a legal tool built to fix the math of a failed financial strategy without immediately destroying the actual company. Despite having a profitable core business, Toys R Us was suffocated by a debt load imposed by its private equity owners. And while the bankruptcy court offered a temporary shield and fresh financing, the years of capital starvation had already taken their toll. The operational damage proved too severe, and the massive retail footprint ultimately collapsed. The dominance of tech disruptors over the last decade rests on their unencumbered balance sheets. Those structures allowed them to spend capital aggressively on logistics and infrastructure, an option denied to their debt-heavy predecessors. In a disruptive economy, a corporation's balance sheet dictates its destiny just as much as its product line does. When financial leverage takes priority over operational flexibility, systemic failure isn't an accident, it is a mathematical certainty. And if you've liked what you've learned here and you're interested in learning more, there's a few links down in the description to more resources to help you understand what the heck happened to these legacy retailers. We'll catch you in the next video.